The next query, really, is regarding a woman who is pregnant or is nursing, breastfeeding, nursing, rearing the children. Why are they exempted?
According to the verse of the Quran in Surah Baqarah, chapter number 2, verse number 185, that if a person is ill and traveling, he can make up his prescribed periods of day of fasting later on. So most of the fuqahas, most of the scholars, they say that these women who are pregnant and breastfeeding, they come under the category of those who are ill. So therefore, if they want, they can abstain from fasting. But there are clear-cut Sahih hadith in which the Prophet has exempted these women from fasting. Mentioned in Sunan ibn Majah, hadith number 1667, that our beloved Prophet says, the obligation for a person to fast and part of the prayer has been lifted from a traveler. And the obligation for fasting has been lifted from a lady who's pregnant and who's breastfeeding. Our beloved Prophet ﷺ also said, it's mentioned in Sunan Nisa'i, in the book of fasting, hadith number 2274, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has relieved the traveler from fasting and half his prayer, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has relieved the pregnant woman and the woman who's breastfeeding from fasting. So based on these two hadith also, it's clear-cut that the pregnant woman and the women who are breastfeeding, they have been exempted. And the logical reason that one can think is because when a lady, she's pregnant or she's breastfeeding, the food she eats is not only for herself. It's for herself as well as the baby she's carrying or the baby she's feeding. So but natural, if her fasting makes it difficult for her or becomes difficult for a baby, then she's exempted from fasting. But if she's in the early stage of pregnancy, and if she feels, or she's breastfeeding, and if she feels that fasting will not cause any damage to her health and will not cause a damage to the baby, then she should fast. If she has a doubt, if she can do it with hardship, as long as there's no damage to herself, to her health, and the baby, she has the option to fast, not to fast. But if it's causing damage to her health or the baby, it becomes haram for her to fast. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want to lay a burden more than what a person can bear. And in this regard, that's the reason Allah has exempted them. Later on, when they're healthy, and they stop breastfeeding, or when the pregnancy ends, after postnatal bleeding, then they have to make up for the fast they've missed before that.
Zakia, I feel that the next question, of all the questions that we've got to ask today, will perhaps shock quite a few people. The issue of a man and his wife, perhaps sitting on a sofa or some other place of comfort, and the husband delivers a kiss on the wife's face, let's say, or the lips of the wife. Is this an action which nullifies the fast or is permitted?
While fasting, if a husband kisses the wife or hugs the wife or shows his love for the wife by kissing on the cheek or the lip or the hand or hugs or embraces, all these things are permissible as long as it does not encourage him to go into an act which is haram for fasting. And this is very well stated in the hadith of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's mentioned in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 3, in the book of fasting, hadith number 1927, that Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, she says that the Prophet used to kiss and embrace his wives while fasting. But he was the best amongst you to control himself. That means the Prophet had the power to control. Similarly, it's mentioned in Sunan Abu Dawud, volume number 2, hadith number 2379, that Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, once, while fasting, kisses his wife. Immediately, he feels sorry and he goes to the Prophet. And he says that, "Oh Prophet, I have sinned. I have sinned against you and Allah." So the Prophet says that, "What have you done?" He says that while fasting, I have kissed my wife. So the Prophet asks him that when you gargle or rinse your mouth while doing wudu, does your fast break? So Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, he said, "No." So why bother? Indicating to him that you can kiss and embrace your wife Furthermore, there's a hadith which is mentioned in Musnad Ahmad, volume number 2, hadith number 6739. One of the Sahaba, he narrates that a young man comes to Prophet Muhammad and asks him that, can I kiss my wife while I'm fasting? The Prophet says, no. Later on, an old man comes to the Prophet and asks him that, can I kiss my wife while fasting? And the Prophet says, yes. So the Sahaba look amongst themselves that how come the answer is differing? Then the Prophet replies that this man can control himself. So the basic ruling is that if a person knows that he can control himself after kissing or hugging his wife, and is sure that it will not lead into an act which will nullify the fast. For example, it will not lead into a sexual intercourse or will not lead into ejaculation. As long as he can control himself, kissing and hugging is permitted. If he cannot control himself and he fears that he will go into that which will nullify the fast, like intercourse or ejaculation, then it is prohibited for him.
So the answer is yes, but it comes with an Islamic health warning.
That's right.
Relates to a woman who's cooking during the fast. Is she allowed to taste the food?
As long as the person who's cooking the food, whether it be a gent cook or lady cook, there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, volume number 3, in the book of fasting, chapter number 25. It says, Ibn Abbas, he narrated that tasting food from the pots or meals, it does not break the fast. This is a mu'allaq hadith of Bukhari, but it is connected along with Sayyid ibn Shayba and Bayhaqi, and the chain goes on. It makes it sahih. And it says that Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him, he says that tasting vinegar and food while fasting. So all these hadith prove that while fasting a person can taste food, but you have to be careful. The food should not enter your throat, you should not swallow the food. And that is the reason the scholars say that if it's required, you should do it. Otherwise not. For example, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he says that tasting food is makruh, unless it's a necessity. Same with Shaykh ibn Taymiyyah. He says that it is makruh unless it's a necessity. And while it's a necessity, if a woman is cooking food, she has to place the food on the tip of the tongue, so that she realizes whether the food is sweet or salty, and then she should spit it out. She should not swallow it. So that will not break her fast. Or if a mother wants to give food to the baby, and the only way she can give is by chewing it. So she is permitted to chew the food and then give it to the baby. But care should be taken that they should not swallow any particle of the food. She should spit it out. So these are necessities where it's permissible to taste food, but unnecessary. Just because you're feeling hungry and you taste it, it's makruh, though it will not break the fast. Makruh means discouraged. It will not break the fast. But otherwise, for a necessity, it can be done, but care should be taken. It does not go down the throat. It should not be swallowed. After tasting the food, should be spat.